Hello everyone, and today we are doing a Shard TCG creature breakdown video, and the creature that we will be breaking down today are the Anthronians from set 1. Now, for people who don't know, Anthronians are humanoid type creatures. We wanted a nice fantasy sounding name. We didn't just want to say humans or humanoids. We wanted something a bit more unique, but anthro, like anthropomorphized, things like that. Anthronian seemed to work as a lovely little name to give human type creatures. And the first Anthronian we will be looking at today is the Red Cap. Now, the Red Cap is originally found in Anglo-Scottish folklore. Now, it's a murderous little goblin that likes to soak its cap in the blood of its victims. So what we did, because we wanted to emphasize the size of the Red Cap, is we gave it this giant little cap that almost completely covers it, which we found was a different take from typical goblin style red caps. If you Google red caps, you'll see what I mean. But one thing's for certain, he definitely looks very mischievous. Now, the Red Cap is a one-shot Chaos Element creature, and its effect is Opportune Moment. So when the field is in entropy, when a creature is destroyed, this creature gains +1 strength. And when the field is in extropy, this creature can gain Cloaked. So it's either gain strength or it becomes cloaked and is hidden away, so it's either getting stronger or it's hiding. It's a very annoying little creature to have, fun to bring out very early game, especially if you've got the right state of the field to make it work, especially if the field is in extropy, so you can capitalize on the cloaking to keep it safe. Alright, and our next one-shot Anthronian creature is the Fairy. Now, the Fairy is of Ether element, and Ether likes to harness things from the deck, because in Shard TCG, we like to think of the deck as the mind, and Ether is the element that harnesses the mind. So, its effect, Bag of Holding. When this creature is summoned, you may search your deck. Draw one binding spell from your deck. Now, this is a nice blend of the element to the Anthronian class itself, because Anthronians like to work with tools, with them being quite humanoid. They've got the dexterous hands. They can actually harness binding spells or like equip type cards. So a binding spell can be tools such as like axes and swords, as well as other things. There are magical binding spells that aren't physical items, but Anthronians are especially attuned to that. The other thing that the Fairy Swarm has, which you may have seen on one of my previous videos when we looked at fairy typing, is the Fairy Swarm ability, where it can attack and swarm. Now, for people who don't know, the swarm mechanic means that you can group up a bunch of creatures that have the same attack and actually move in for one attack, but you're only putting one creature at risk, barring a few other keywords that might actually counter it, such as a piercing attack. So if your first creature is destroyed, it would then attack the next creature, or a splash attack, which would actually obliterate all of them most likely. So be careful who you're facing up against, but definitely a very nice move there. Its counter attack, Steady Mind, has a counter with Fear. Now, Fear allows you to isolate to a one-on-one with your opponent, which is also quite useful in certain situations rather than having that group attack. Now we're starting to level up a little bit here. We have the Minotaur. Now, funny thing, the Minotaur was originally designed to be a beast in Shard TCG. But at that time, we didn't have Anthronians as a class. We had Brute as a class. Now, Brute seems more like a mindset. You know, anything could be a brute as long as it's very aggressive and forthcoming. That's how it described it to us. So we wanted to take away that class and bring it into something else. So the creature type Anthronian was invented. And then we found that the Minotaur seemed to fit that Anthronian design more than the beast design itself, even though it is half beast, half man. Now, the Minotaur being the element of Quake means it's quite attuned to abilities like Overexert, which you can see in its charge attack to the left. So Overexert, it can do 6 damage, which is quite a lot for a 2-shard creature. And that 6 damage, once it is committed, your creature doesn't just rest, which would have you ready up again at the end of your turn, but it would actually sleep, which means it would go into a rest mode at the end of your turn and then be ready at the end of your opponent's turn. Now, its effect offering: once per turn during the combat phase, rest an ally creature, and then you can ready this creature. So if you have an abundance of creatures on the field, you can actually start to rest those creatures to recharge your Minotaur, which counteracts the sleep ability really. But of course, if you burn through all of your creatures, that final attack will cause the Minotaur to sleep, so it is a little bit problematic still. But overall, a nice card to use and still a very strong card, definitely ahead of the curve. So our final two Anthronians are 3 Shard Anthronians, and this was the pinnacle of set 1 of Shard TCG. Of course, if you want to take a look at shardtcg.com, you can search by cards and select Anthronian as a type. You can see the new Anthronians that we have in set 2 that actually offer creatures that are above a 3 shard. For people who don't know, shard goes up to a maximum of 5. So another Quake element Anthronian, which is a common theme with Anthronians. They are a bit more attuned to Quake as well. This Anthronian, the Aten, has the Berserker title. Now the Berserker title means that it always has to use an action. If it is able to use an action, it has to use an action. So there's no being cautious or trying to organize things. The Berserker wants to attack. So you have to be a little bit wary of that, you know. If your opponent wants to set up a trap, the Aten will fall for the trap, you know. Sometimes 2 heads aren't better than 1. He is just going to go storming in, you know. Now, the Aten's attack Crushing Blow hits for a nice 6, which is pretty standard for a 3 Shard Anthronian. Of course, we saw with the Minotaur, it had a 6 attack, but that also used Overexert, so there was a bit of a setback to using that one, where the Aten does not have that drawback. Its counter, which is only a 3, is a little bit below par. But when you take a look at its effect, a Nexicon, you can see the balancing that we were aiming for at the time. So when this creature is targeted by a binding spell, reduce the mana cost of the binding spell by 1 mana. Now at the start of your turn, you have 5 mana. So essentially you're saving 20% of your mana when binding something to this creature, which can be quite a lot. If you think about 20% as a ratio, it's quite a substantial amount. Okay, and we're coming up to our last creature, and if you've been enjoying the video, please hit that like button, and if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button as well, because we really appreciate it. I would like to finish this series up. We've only got I think it's reptiles and amphibians left for the creatures, but then perhaps taking the series a little further and taking a look at the different spell types would be quite good, because there is a lot more cards in each range of spell types. So we could take a look at cast spells, binding spells, ritual spells, channel spells, and it might be some inspiration for your own TCG if you are a creator. So be sure to stay tuned, and we'll get those out on the channel, you know, as time progresses. So the Yeti is a frost element creature, a nice 3 shard bulky thing. Would originally have been a brute as well. This was the whole intention of it, but here we are, we have an Anthronian, and brutes are no longer a thing. It's lost to history. Its attack Cold Collision, the same amount of damage as the Aten without any drawbacks, hits for 6. It's got a nice chunky 6 health, and it's got a massive 2 block. Now, a 2 block can really save your skin. So if you wanted to one-hit knock out the Yeti, you would have to hit it for a massive 8 damage, which is the kind of damage level that we're looking at in a 4 shard creature. So the Yeti is quite strong. It can sustain on the field a bit, you know, as long as it doesn't get overrun with a number of creatures. And its effect, my strength is my bond. While this creature has a spellbound, this creature gains Pierce. So Pierce is a nice handy little move which will combine with its Cool Collision. So now that it has a 6 attack with Pierce, the Yeti would be able to attack an opponent's creature, and if successful would actually harm the opponent with the excess damage of that. So it's a nice little handy bonus there. Doing that little bit of chip damage over time can be very harmful to your opponent, and is definitely worth pursuing those little niggling moves to make sure that you're taking your opponent out slowly, because sometimes it can be hard to get full-on direct attacks to your opponent. So just take what you can, and the Yeti is a fantastic tool to do that with. Alright, so that was set 1 Anthronians for Shard TCG. Like I said before, we do have set 2 Anthronians on the Shard TCG website. There's a link in the description below, so if you want to check those out, feel free. There are some fun ones to browse there, and hopefully in the future we'll be doing another video like this for set 2. Okay guys, thank you very much. I wish you all the best, and I hope to see you next time. Goodbye.